I suppose by now you have watched or seen or heard of a documentary entitled For the Bible Tells Me So, a documentary that's promoting the concept of homosexuality and is affirming that homosexual conduct is compatible with Bible teaching. That one can be a Christian, a follower of Jesus Christ, and at the same time practice homosexuality. I'm here to tell you that that is not the case. That documentary has missed it by a mile. These folks in that documentary, all these doctors of divinity, have been so quick to try to endorse and defend homosexual conduct that they haven't realized that they're going to have to end up defending all sexual conduct between consenting human beings. They try to get a little bit in, they try to defend that, and they end up having to defend all of it. Now, we call that being between a rock and a hard place. And I think those highly educated folks, they call that a dilemma. You keep watching if you're brave enough, and I'll show you where these individuals have missed it by a mile, and they're going to end up having to endorse everything that every consenting human being wants to do with each other as far as sexuality is concerned. There was a statement in that documentary made by Dr. Lawrence C. Keener of the Disciples of Christ. And of course, the Disciples of Christ are certainly not a conservative group by any stretch of the imagination. But that's neither here nor there. Here's the statement that he made, and this is the basic position of that documentary. Listen to this statement. He said, and I quote, "My theological belief is that all loving relationships are honored by God. I do not believe the Bible speaks against loving committed homosexual relationships." End quote. Now I wonder if he ever thought about maybe taking the word homosexual out of there and putting the word heterosexual in there. Not talk about marriage or anything. Not talk about two people being married. But just put the word heterosexual in there. Would you say, I don't think the Bible speaks against loving committed heterosexual relationships? I know and you know he's not talking about something platonic. He's talking about a relationship between two human beings that will involve sex. Sexual relations with one another. That's what he's talking about. No question about that. Now I've emailed a lot of these fellas in that documentary. You can read most of these emails at balancedpreaching.com. Read them for yourself. I have emailed Dr. Mel White of Soulforce, Dr. Peter Gomez of Harvard Divinity. I've emailed Steve Kendall of Clergy United, who also appears in that documentary. I emailed those of Faith in America, Jimmy Creech's group, who also appears in that documentary and also appears on the Soulforce website as well. I also emailed a Jim Rigby, a Presbyterian minister of Austin, Texas, who appeared in a video on the Soulforce website that was entitled, and I quote, "Homosexuality, the debate is over, the verdict is in, not a sickness, not a sin." I emailed these individuals with the very propositions or questions I'm going to share with you. And you can read how they answered, or I should say in most cases, how they refused to answer these basic, simple Bible questions. You've got to be amazed at people and their failure to answer these basic questions about sexual morality that I'm asking. But I'm asking them to show you that what they are saying is not true about homosexuality or / homosexual conduct. There's simply no way to defend that from a biblical position. Now, if somebody wants to just go and do what they want to do and throw the Bible out, I'm sure people want to do that, they can do that. But these individuals are trying to say you can hold to the Bible and hold to homosexual conduct at the same time and that they're compatible with one another. I'm telling you that's not the case at all. And these propositions or questions will show you that. Here are the propositions that I sent these men. And if anyone else that's in or out of that video, that documentary, For the Bible Tells Me So, and anyone else who's listening to this, if you want to give it a shot and answer these questions, and do so in a consistent way, and think you can hold to homosexual conduct, be my guest. But I'm doing this to help people who realize that this conduct is not in harmony with what the Bible teaches. There's no way in this world that you can put those two things together. You know, all this discussion about the Leviticus passages and Genesis chapter 19 with Sodom and Gomorrah and Romans chapter 1 that these people have twisted and distorted in that video and in that documentary. All that's irrelevant. That doesn't matter a thing. You'll see that as you look at these propositions and think about these propositions, these questions that I sent to these individuals. Here's the first true or false proposition I sent to these men. And you can also put this in question form. I had some of them complain because it was, they thought I was making a syllogism. I wasn't making a syllogism. I was just simply asking a question, true or false. Here it is, the first one. The Bible, specifically the New Covenant, condemns fornication or sexual immorality. Can you believe that these men would not answer that question? They would not answer it. That's amazing to me, that they would find it difficult to answer true or false to that question. Well, or that proposition, let's ask it in question form. We could ask it this way. Does the Bible, specifically the New Covenant, condemn fornication or sexual immorality? In other words, is sexual immorality or fornication a sin? Does God condemn that? It's amazing these men would not answer that question. Listen, I know and you know the Bible condemns that. Mark chapter 7 verse 21, Jesus himself said these words, "For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders." The Apostle Paul, under inspiration of the Spirit of God, wrote these words in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 18. Flee sexual immorality or fornication. Every sin that a man does is outside the body, but he who commits sexual immorality sins against his own body. How can it be any clearer than that? Look at Galatians chapter 5 and the works of the flesh, where Paul there talks about things like fornication, adultery, uncleanness, lewdness. Go down to verse 21, those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. Friends, you know and I know the Bible condemns fornication and sexual immorality. Now, some of these fellows try to say, well, what's fornication? Can you imagine some guy saying that to his wife? She's accusing him of messing around, of being unfaithful to him, and saying, you were fornicating. You were committing fornication. You're an adulterer. He said, well, honey, you know, what is fornication? Well, you really can't put our finger on what that is. We really can't put our finger on what adultery is. Nobody believes that garbage. The only time people want to try to take that route is when they have something that they can't defend, but that they want to defend. And these fellows know it. There are other passages. Look at Ephesians chapter 5, verse 3. Listen, I don't have to go any further to demonstrate to you that the Bible condemns the New Covenant. And that's what we're talking about. The Old Covenant has been done away with. These passages in Leviticus that all those folks are talking about and arguing about, and the rabbis are talking about on that video, they're relevant. We live under the New Covenant, and the New Covenant condemns sexual immorality or fornication. There's no question about that. But here's the next proposition or question that I gave to these men in that documentary. Here it is. Read it for yourself as I put it on the screen. According to the Bible, specifically the New Covenant, if a man and a woman, both unmarried, engage in consensual sexual relations with each other, such relations between the two would constitute fornication or sexual immorality. Can you imagine those individuals not answering true to that? Or just refusing to answer altogether? Put it in question form. This way, according to the Bible, specifically the New Covenant, if a man and a woman both unmarried engage in consensual sexual relations with each other, would such relations between the two constitute fornication or sexual immorality? Yes or no? Now, you may see where I'm going by this time, and see why I said at the beginning of this, these fellows have put themselves between a rock and a hard place. You know why they couldn't answer that? And why they wouldn't answer that? I can tell you why. Because of the next proposition, and here it is. Here's the third proposition, or / question. True or false, according to the Bible, specifically the New Covenant, if a woman and a woman, both unmarried, engage in consensual sexual relations with each other, would such relations between the two constitute fornication or sexual immorality? Is that true or false? All I did was change the gender of one of the persons involved in that scenario and in that proposition. That's all I've done there. See, the first proposition is heterosexual. Second proposition is homosexual. They knew they could not answer true to the one talking about the man and the woman without cutting their throat. And I say that figuratively. Without showing themselves to be in a dilemma in trying to answer the third proposition about the two women. One is heterosexual, the other one is homosexual. Now, friends, listen. If neither one of those is fornication, if the man and the woman is not fornication, now you can just as easily have two men put in that third proposition. You could have two men and four women. You could put whatever combination, whatever quantity you want. It's still a true proposition. The answer will still be true, whether it's proposition or whether it's in question form. But let me ask you this. If fornication or sexual immorality is not occurring in either one of those two cases that I've just presented, please share with me a scenario or a combination involving consensual sexual relations in which it would be occurring. If the man and the woman unmarried is not fornication, if the woman and the woman unmarried is not fornication, then give me a combination of human beings who are consenting to have sex with one another that you would point to and say, that's fornication. The man and the woman's not, the woman and the woman's not, the man and the man's not, but now we see over here, that's fornication. You see their dilemma? Friends, in their haste to try to legitimize homosexual conduct, they have unwittingly put their stamp of approval upon all sexual relations between consenting human beings. If not, why not? These men and women in that documentary who speak so boldly and pretend to be such experts, and I suppose they have a fine education, there's no question about that, but you understand that's irrelevant when it comes to truth. These individuals cannot, upon biblical grounds, condemn any sexual conduct, any sexual relations between consenting human beings. That's their dilemma. That is why they would not answer the propositions or the questions that I asked them. Go to balancedpreaching.com and read. You'll have to go down to the lower left-hand corner where it talks about older posts. And you'll be able to see those older posts and those email exchanges between myself and these individuals. Read them. Friends, people who have truth don't behave this way and refuse to answer questions. They don't do that. These individuals can't defend their position. That whole documentary is a waste of time. Unless you want to say all consenting relationships or all consensual sexual relations between human beings is fine. You think about that. Now, I have two other videos that are a little bit longer and go into some other things. They're entitled, For the Bible Tells Me So, Ain't So, Parts 1 and 2. They really just talk about some other things that aren't really just a build-up to this same issue. But think about it. These people have tried to do that. You parents, don't give in to this. Don't compromise the truth for your children. Have them listen to this. Have them answer these questions. Let them deal with this. And then let them realize that even though they might have an attraction towards somebody, they might say that they have an orientation, they're expected to practice self-control. You might have an attraction to a lot of things. A man might have an attraction to children. What would you tell him? You'd say, you can't do that. You need to practice self-control. A man might have an attraction to his neighbor's wife. What's he supposed to do? Practice self-control. Have no right to those people. None. Even if the man's wife is consenting, you have no right to her. If you have questions, ask them. If you want to try to answer these propositions, give it a shot. If you know somebody else that can, tell them to give it a shot as well. Think about it. For the Bible Tells Me So is in a real dilemma. Thanks for listening.